I sort of figured out I wouldn't. Hey everyone, how you doing? All right, Palm Desert, what's happening? All right.
Your movie is happening.
My movie, it's almost done now, but thanks so much for coming everyone. It's lovely to be out here and in the desert and to have you see the film. It's, made on the other side of the world and here it is all these years later, so thank you.
Well, let's give us your background, because you were an actor in Australia. You're pretty well known in Australia.
I was a child actor, so I had an agent when I was 9 years old. No one forced me to go into it. I was just one of those precocious kids, and so I've been doing it a long, long time, acting in front of the camera. We had the Warner Brothers studios on the Gold Coast, which is right near where I'm from, Brisbane, Australia, and so we had American TV shows like Flipper and Beastmaster, if you remember those shows, yeah. So every so often for a young kid there'd be an opportunity to go and to act in one of those shows as a guestie, and we'd hone our American accents as kids, and my brother and I were both actors, and we'd drive our parents crazy by talking in American accents constantly. We'd watch sitcoms like Family Ties and Cheers and Golden Girls, and my dream was always to come to the States and do comedy, and so I went to acting school when I was 17. As soon as I got out of high school, and then while I was in acting school, I started writing theatre. I started writing plays for my friends and I to perform when we weren't performing everything else. I was just obsessed with it. And then from that I wrote more theatre after I got out of acting school, and from those plays I got offered a job writing for a sitcom in Australia. And from that staff job writing on a sitcom, I started writing features. And this was not the first feature that I wrote, but the first feature that wasn't terrible. Because you get better. And to be honest, I would be embarrassed to show you the first draft of this. Because that's just how it works. First drafts are the worst drafts. But it took me a long time to realise that the first drafts aren't meant to be perfect. And in fact, you've probably heard this old adage about filmmaking. That a film is never finished; it's abandoned. And that is very true. Even on the script level, it's not like you ever finish a script and go, "Oh, finally, I won my script. I beat it." You just don't. At one point, you have to go, "That's enough. Like, we may as well make it now because I could work on this forever." And a film is very much like that. At some point, the producer steps in and goes, "You don't have any more days editing. You have to stop."
How'd you come up with the topic? Because this is Kay, the movie gal, who interviewed. I read her interview with you.
Oh, okay, yes. Yeah. You were tweeting me. Oh, it's so nice to meet you in person.
She tweets everybody.
Oh, she tweets it. Don't tell me that. I wanted to feel special.
But no, I read how this topic came up. You were sitting around with friends, drinking a little bit, and all of a sudden you all started talking about your little fetishes. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much right. Look, I think that sex is the topic that we'd all rather be talking about most of the time. And inevitably at a dinner party we end up talking about it at some point because it's the great unifier. We may all do different jobs, and we may all be different genders and believe in different gods or whatever else. But ultimately, around a dinner party, we've had enough glasses of wine. We're going to talk about sex because it's the one thing that we can all relate to. Right, we're all sexual creatures. We're all monkeys, and so what has really fascinated me about the subject of sex in recent years, has been how how adventurous we've got. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think humans have always been really adventurous and experimental, but how accessible we are now to knowing about that. I was thinking about this recently, where once upon a time, if I was into a certain thing that I might have been a little bit, embarrassed about, or how do I know that someone else is into this thing? Once upon a time, you'd have probably kept that to yourself. But now, you can go online with a certain sense of anonymity and find like-minded people. They may not be in your neighborhood, but they'll certainly find them somewhere on planet Earth who you can talk to. And I think that's those sorts of opportunities that the internet's provided us has really changed our desires and our hunger and our sexuality, and and not to mention how prolific pornography is on the internet now. A friend of mine who's a mum was like, my child's 4 and she can operate an iPad. I'm like, doesn't that scare the shit out of you? I mean, do you know what's on the internet? That's unbelievable to me. I remember when I was a kid, so I'm 33, about to turn 34, and I feel like I'm really blessed, right, to be in this golden age where I was on the cusp of the internet. I remember it coming in, but I was young enough not to have it rule my life. Didn't have a mobile phone in school. Didn't have an internet, thank God. I mean, my God, bullying was hard enough without the internet. I don't know how kids do it these days. And then was able to still be in college, and you know, when the internet came in and mobile phones came in and texting, and it was like, I remember when texting came in, it was like, holy shit, you could write something and they write you immediately back, and how bored we are with it now. But, I'm sorry, forgive me, you should never put a microphone in front of me because I won't shut up. But,
we're learning a lot about you.
No, I know. And I was going to say, I remember, just on the subject of pornography, because I do think actually it says a lot about society at the moment. I remember finding like a topless magazine at the back of a 7-Eleven once on my way home from school. And man, I kept that thing until it was dust. I mean, that was it. It was the only thing, I'd never, like boobs. I was like, couldn't believe it. But now, Tinder and pornography, how dispensable and disposable everything is. How, I don't know, and we have this voracious hunger for it now. People have this voracious hunger for sex and sexuality, and too much is never enough. And so you did ask a question, I haven't forgotten it. That sort of came up around the dinner table, that conversation about how sex is changing so much, and how experimental we're getting, and how bold we're getting in terms of asking for what it is we want in the bedroom. And then when I went home and started researching fetishes and stuff, I knew that there was not only a film in this, there were probably 100 films in this, and that I hadn't quite seen a comedy that had explored this territory in a way that I felt was satisfying. So I definitely wanted to make it comic without it being broad, and so that was my attempt anyway.
Well, here's a new question. How'd you pick the part that you played? Oh. Because you had a choice of, you could have played almost all of them.
Oh, well, look, to be honest, I wasn't going to be in the film at all. That was not my intention, and I never write for me in mind. I really never do that. We had offered the role to somebody else, and they had to pull out due to a scheduling conflict, and we were really desperate. And that's not to say that I didn't think I could do a good job. I was just overwhelmed by doing a feature, my first feature, and I didn't want to be distracted by being in front of the camera. But ultimately, it ended up being something that was necessary because I was cheap and we had no money. So I was like, well, I'm not going to charge me anything. So I'll do it.
Someone pulled out.
Someone pulled out?
From this movie, yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, it was a scheduling thing. I mean, at least they told me that. No, look, ultimately, I'm glad I'm in it. But I do remember it was difficult to be in front of the camera and behind it, just in terms of our schedule. I mean, it was so quick that there was really no time to look at playback. I mean, there was a scene where I had like a poppy seed in my teeth, and we kind of had to brush it out in post because no one was there was no captain at the wheel when I was in front of the camera, and we just had to move so quickly. And in a lot of ways, I think the acting really benefits from that because the actors don't have time to overthink it. They're responding so quickly. And there's this weird electricity between them because you're lucky to get a second take, any of them. And ultimately it makes the dialogue so alive. I think it does anyway. It really makes it doesn't feel rehearsed to me at all. It feels so spontaneous. And I think part of that is because the second actor really takes their time with it. I can often see the acting. So I tried to avoid that as best I could.
How long was the shoot and where did you shoot it?
19 days.
Nothing.
19 days, 17 locations. So that's the biggest statistic. That was really tough. So often we would move twice in a day. Full company moves. That's packing. That's unloading the truck, packing it up, unloading the truck, packing it up, unloading the truck. I mean, you're lucky to get 3 or 4 hours of shooting in a day like that. I mean, we were really cramming it. We shot in Sydney, all on location. Our locations manager did a terrific job because I had a really specific design in mind. I feel like middle-class Australia is very seldom represented in Australian film. I don't know why exactly. One of my favourite Australian films is Lantana. I don't know if anyone's seen that film. Has anyone seen Lantana? Oh great, I'm so glad. If you haven't, definitely one to try and find on Netflix or iTunes or something. I absolutely adore it. I used to be a projectionist, one of my many shitty jobs that I did trying to be an actor. And I used to work at an art house cinema. And so Lantana played when I was a projectionist there. I must have seen it, a dozen times. I just absolutely adored it. And it was one of the few films that represented middle-class Australia, sort of a suburban Australia. So often we represent in Australia the criminal class. I've been outspoken about this in Australia, and there's been a bit of criticism about my criticism against that. So I desperately wanted houses that looked like the neighbourhood you wanted to live in. And because I think there's nothing more exciting than the misadventures of the middle class. I think they have something to lose. You know what I mean? They need to put a veneer of normalcy in front of them, and that to me is funny. That what goes on behind closed doors is so far from normal, and what goes on behind all of our closed doors, really, if you were to make a film of it, is funny and sad and dangerous and suspenseful. Like our lives really are all our movies. And so, I just sort of wanted to make a film that looked inside those doors briefly and then shut them again before, and knowing that life would go on for some of them.
How did you come up with the idea? I thought it was hysterical with the new neighbor, the sex offender. Nobody cares that he's a sex offender. They're all looking at what do you call those gingerbread men?
They're gollywogs.
You can't get them anymore in
Australia? You can't, no. They were discontinued in the 80s, I believe, the late 80s. For obvious reasons, but they certainly were a real cookie. Yeah, so the sex offender was really interesting. I mean, I love the character of Steve so much, and the actor who plays him, Kim Gingell, is a really well-known old comic actor in Australia. He's one of the guys I grew up watching on TV. A bit of an idol of mine, and he's there for lots of reasons. One of them is that it was, as you say, to highlight how selfish I think the world has become. I'm not calling you selfish. I'm sure you're awesome people, but I mean that how rarely do we get a knock on the door anymore? Our lives have just shrunk into, and the internet has a massive part to play in that. Don't call me. Like, how many times? I don't want to call. Don't call me. Just text me. I don't want to talk to you. Just text me and we'll figure it out. And everything's now like, you can cancel 15 minutes before. Do you remember the time when once they'd left the house, you could not cancel? Because they would just be waiting there for you and there'd be no way to reach them. But these days, 5 minutes before, I said, nah, can't make it, fine. All right? So basically, I love Steve because no matter what he's telling these people, their lives are so much more important than what's right in front of them. Like, if you're not a part of my universe, I'm not interested. And I think that's how a lot of us feel these days, is our little universes are getting smaller and smaller. But I also thought it was interesting that what Steve had done, whatever his fetish was, had crossed some line. That he had crossed a legal line, and the others, for the most part, had not. That theirs were a moral dilemma, not a legal one. And I thought that was, and the mystery of what he was really important to me. I think we all have assumptions, and I've heard, lots of theories about what it is he's done. I mean, some are obviously more common than others, but he's. I think that's. Did I answer your question with that, Steve? Yeah, he's a great guy.
I was going to ask you about all the actors. The acting is really good. Are these well-known actors in Australia?
Yes and no. So none of them are big stars.
Mm-hmm. You didn't want to use big stars, right?
I really didn't. I thought that would be really, well, my producers and producers will do this, go cast a star, cast a star, cast a star. And they would, and I would go, well, that's so weird because then you'll have 9 people no one knows and Nicole Kidman. Like, and my reaction was, that would be so weird to me. Why you'd not know anyone. And by the way, Nicole Kidman, she probably wouldn't have done this film. I'm just using her as an example. But you know what I mean? Like a star you recognise, that would have unbalanced the whole film to me. So my argument was, either you make them all celebrities, or none of them celebrities. And anything in between would have just seemed so odd. So I fought and fought and fought and fought. How man did I fight? To keep who I thought were the best actors, even though they weren't famous. And ultimately in Australia, our Oscars, we got nominated for 6 acting awards for this, which is more acting awards in a single film than in any Australian film ever. So for me that was sort of vindication after all my battles. Something that I find interesting, Erin James, who plays Monica in the phone, that's her first job in front of the camera. She's never, she's tremendous. TJ came in, TJ who plays Sam, had come, and we were really struggling to find, we try going out to deaf actors, there just aren't that many in Australia, and those that are have never acted before really, and they were just struggling with the material, we just couldn't find them. It was really tough. We actually put a casting call out throughout the city of Sydney. We got two people replied to us, so it's really tough. And they hadn't acted before. So we ultimately then said, does anyone know how to speak sign language? Can anyone learn it? TJ came in, and he was terrific in the audition. I said, do you speak sign language? He goes, no, I only learnt enough for this audition. And I went, oh, okay, well, who taught you? And he goes, oh, my friend, Erin. And I went, oh, what does Erin look like? I mean, we're struggling to find this role. Erin came in, she did great, ultimately got the job, they both did. And I asked them to rehearse as best they could together, but TJ was off doing a movie up in Queensland, and so they did rehearse, of course, but the only time they could, it was via Skype. And so by the time they got in to be in front of the camera, I mean, that was the weirdest thing. The energy between them over that link it was so palpable. And one of my great little pieces of irony in the film is that perhaps the couple who end up the closest together are never in the same room as each other, and the couples who find the greatest distance between them are sleeping next to each other. And I think that's no, I'm not the first person to make that kind of thing, but it's sort of nice at the end of the film to go, oh yeah, love conquers all, and love is worth it. I think that's why I wanted to end on that note, is to go that there are ups and downs, but it's so worth it to be in love, and that's why we make movies and songs and poetry and books about it, because it's such a wonderful thing when it works.
Now, I'm going to let you all ask questions in a minute, but where'd you open the movie, and how well was it received, and how is it? Where's it go from here?
Yeah, so the first screening was at the Sydney Film Festival, and that was, I kid you not, that was 2 days after we finished the film. We all but raced, like, do you remember that scene in Broadcast News where Joan Cusack is running through with the tape of the news? It was sort of like that. We were running to get it to the festival on time. It was received very, very well. It then went to Toronto, where it was received extremely well, and we sold it everywhere. And we were feeling very good about the film, and we were all very optimistic. And then it opened in Australia, and look, to be honest, the critics savaged the film, absolutely savaged it. And when I say that, you go, oh, it can't have been that bad. So we opened in Australia. Our Rotten Tomatoes score at the end of the Australian run was 30%. 3-0. So Australia had deemed us a 3 out of 10 when all was said and done, and that really hurt us a lot because we didn't have any P&A for the film. So we were really banking on good reviews, and we thought we'd get them because we got them from Sydney and we got them from Toronto, but man, after that, the tables turned, and they turned hard. And so that's followed us around, unfortunately, that score, and we've dragged our way back from that a little bit since then, because it's opened in other countries, and we've gotten, I think, fair reviews elsewhere. And I wish reviews didn't matter. I really do. I don't read them, to be honest. I really don't. But that Rotten Tomatoes score is
That's a killer.
It's a killer. It's a killer because it's linked to everything. It's linked to iTunes. It's linked to Fandango, the app. It's linked to that green splat, which is tattooed on our film, unfortunately, has turned so many people off. The amount of tweets I get going, oh man, I saw your film, I thought it was going to be crap, but it was great. The amount of, I mean, seriously, I get it all the time. I go, oh my God, it's so fun. I read the review that said it was garbage, but I really liked it. I was like, yeah, it's tough. And it makes me wonder how many films I've missed. That I remember giving a miss to, I don't know if you've seen Edge of Tomorrow, that Tom Cruise film. I gave it a miss because I don't know, it looked not great or whatever. Somebody told me to see it, and I really liked it. I really, really, really liked it. And it was just one of those things where I almost didn't see that. And that's a film I think about a lot, and I really enjoyed it. So I do, yeah, look, I just want people to see the film.
Why do you think it's better received here in the States?
It's a really interesting question, and I would never have guessed that was going to be the case. I would have guessed that we would have been received really warmly back home, and you know that the States might have struggled a little bit. It's been the opposite. I honestly can't tell you that. I don't know. I think that
Rex Reed loved it. He hates everything.
Really, I don't know who that is, but
Yeah.
terrific. Great. I mean, well, there you go. Badge of honor from Rex. Yeah, I'm not sure. There is a thing. Has anyone heard of the tall poppy syndrome in Australia? It might be hard for you guys to grasp because it's a very specifically Australian cultural phenomenon, and it's very real. It's basically the idea is that the tallest poppies get cut down. So if you get too successful, the Australians love to make us all equal. We're a very egalitarian country. No one's better than anyone else. We're all the bloody same. And I think what hurt us in Australia, if I'm being totally honest, was how well we were received in Toronto. That, I really do think, I think back home, the critics were like, who's this first-time filmmaker getting all this buzz back? We'll bring him down to earth. I think we'll bring him down a peg or two because, you know, he needs to earn his stripes a little bit. I mean, look, this is all a theory. I have no idea. Maybe people just hated it. I don't know. It's fine. All I know is I don't think it's a 3 out of 10 film. I mean, you'd have to be a pretty terrible film to be 3 out of 10. But it, so yeah, I don't know. I throw my hands in the air. All I could do is make the film. It took me 8 years to make it. It took them 90 minutes to tear it apart. You know, that's the nature of art, isn't it? I mean.
Well, they've never made a film either.
Well, you know, of course.
Dennis said they never made a film.
Yeah.
Right. And if they knew a fraction of the heartache that went into it, the compromises that needed to be made in order to make it at all.
It's not a 3.
No, it's not. I don't think
the film is good.
Yeah.
The film
Look,
is
a 3, I think it's, oh, by the way, and we can don't talk about it. Oh, thank you. No. I appreciate that. I really do. I genuinely mean it. But like, you know, I would always say 3 out of 10 is like a student film. Like it barely makes sense. I think it needs to literally make technical mistakes where the editing jumps all over the show. I think that you have to reserve a 3 out of 10 for those sorts of films. So I think if it makes any coherent linear sense, you can give it a 5.
Okay, John, when you were sitting around with your friends drinking and you were all talking about sex and fetishes, and this is the birth of the movie,
Sure.
2 questions.
Yeah.
One, was there a fetish you didn't use?
Oh.
1 or 2? 'Cause you know which fetish I hated? I guess the sleeping one.
Right.
That was hard to watch.
Yeah. It's, I mean.
You licking feet or whatever, that's fine.
Oh, that's fine?
Yeah. but
Okay.
The sleeping fetish was sort of sick.
Yeah, I
You
mean.
could have Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. I mean.
But also,
They're all real, of course. They're all real fetishes.
I also just want to know, before I read the review, I knew it's about 5 couples,
Right.
right? So I said to a friend, I bet there's a same-sex couple in the movie. Did you ever think of doing that?
Look, it comes up almost every Q&A. Why is there not a gay couple in there? And it's a totally fair question because you would think there are 5 couples. There's every opportunity to put one in there if it's a cross-section of, you know, relationships. My response might underwhelm you, and that is that I simply, when I wrote the film, I was in my early to mid-20s. And I just didn't think of it. It just didn't occur to me. I think you got to cast your mind back almost 10 years ago now.
But what if you wrote the film now?
Oh, but that's a really interesting question. And the answer to that is, without question, not only because I've grown as a human, you know, and but also the climate has changed. You know, it's so different now. I mean, because now everything is under the microscope. But it sort of wasn't so much 10 years ago, and I certainly wasn't thinking about that stuff in my early to mid-20s. I was just, you know, kind of write what you know, and what I knew at that point were you know, heterosexual relationships, and you know, that was sort of it, really. But I would absolutely do it differently if I were to write it again now. And you know, a lot of people ask me, would you do a sequel? And the answer to that is I would do a sequel. You know,
because I've got a story for you.
Oh, I love this. Oh, I love it. Co-writing credit. And of course, if there was a sequel, there'd be no question. At least, I mean, there'd just be a much more diverse look at sexuality as opposed to the fetishes. Yeah. So I mean, you know, you learn so much doing so much, and that probably I would class as one of my regrets. Actually, I wish I had. Yeah.
Do we have questions? Let me go. I'm going to run.
Oh, sure. I can repeat the question.
Well, that's what I do.
Oh.
I get up and do it. But the other thing I learned about Australia, because I haven't been there yet, because I'm afraid of Helen Reddy. A horrible person.
Yeah.
The beds are much smaller.
The beds are smaller.
Much smaller.
I think a Cal King is a little bigger. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, much smaller.
Okay, I'm not a filmmaker, so this might be very elementary,
No.
but did you film each couple, all the scenes
together?
of each couple, and then edit the sequences because it was smooth as silk? It was,
Thank you.
Yeah.
The answer to that is mostly yes. Partly because it's so tough. Getting 11 actors together is like herding cats. It's really difficult to get everyone's schedule to line up, but it is sort of easy to get two people to have 2 or 3 days together. But it was written. It's hard to describe this. I had written it. If you were to read it on the page, it actually went chapter by chapter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was not cut up the way it was here. Now, I always knew that it would end up somewhere like this, not knowing the exact edit points, but we spent a long time putting the Rubik's Cube together in the edit suite, and it was beautiful to watch the alchemy come together and watch those couples all fold in on each other as we were cutting it.
Can we have a question back here?
Where did you get the
I just wanted to comment on your choice for music, the music in the film. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Was that,
Thank you.
did you make those choices or you collaborated?
Yeah, I gotta say, so the music is something I'm so happy when people mention it, because we had $0 in the budget for soundtrack, literally nothing. And my producer said, you can't make a film, you can't have a single song in it. And I went, I can't do that. I can't live with that decision, because I've lived with this film for 8 years, and I've filmed it in my head 1 million times, and it has music in it, and it has specific songs in it. And so I cut a check, knowing I would never see that money again, and I haven't. And so when you mention it, it makes, even though my business manager thought I was an absolute idiot, and my lawyer said, you're dumb, you'll never see this money again. When people mention it in a Q&A, I genuinely know in my heart that I did the right thing. Because if it affected one person, and I heard another person clap and a few nods, then I wasn't crazy. Then the music did have emotional power. And I knew that's what its function was. I didn't put it in there because I like the Hollies, I just want to hear it. I genuinely felt it had a really powerful emotional impact. That's
It was
why,
appropriate too.
yeah, it really, I really believed that it made the film better. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you so much.
I have a question back here. I'd like to know about film distribution. I live about 30 miles east of Los Angeles. About 3 weeks ago, I saw the advertisement for this movie in the LA Times, Sunday LA Times. It was shown as coming soon to one theater. And so I just happened to be out here in the desert, and I saw the flyer for this movie presentation tonight, so I was lucky to be able to come. Is the distribution for the film determined before it's released or after it's released? Because where I live, I guess 30 miles east of Los Angeles, we can see in the theaters like AMC, Regal, Cinemark, we can see playing at one time, there might be 5 Frozen, Disney film, 5 Terminator, but we never get small films like this.
Yeah.
So, and rather than drive all the way to the Laemmle Theater in Pasadena, we miss a lot of the smaller films like this. So can you give me an idea of how that film distribution works?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I'll try and perhaps you can corner me in the lobby afterwards. I can explain a little more, so I don't spend all night talking about it, and I could. So film distribution, it's really tough. It's really tough because what the distributors have to do is spend money marketing the film, right? And that costs a lot of money. And basically, they made the decision that we don't think spending oodles of money, I mean, they would have to spend like tens of millions of dollars in order to make people aware of the film enough to distribute it out to all the cinemas you want it to be in. That it's such a risk, right? And then in order to get that money back, it would have to be a hit, right? So the reason, when you see Terminator posters and billboards all around the place, hundreds of millions of dollars are going into that, hundreds of millions. And what most people do when they open the paper or they look in their app and they go, they're making a calculated risk. They go, oh, it's something in marketing called the price quality assumption, right? Anyone heard of this theory, the price quality? People assume that if it costs more, it's better, right? So not true. We all know it's not true, right? But we do. We often will hold it up. Why is this one $1 more? Is it better? Is that why it's $1 more? And you make this assumption that it's better. And a lot of people, when they're looking at movies, they go, well, I've seen a billboard for Terminator, and I didn't see a billboard for Little Death. And I'm only going to see one movie this week because I don't have that much time, and a movie's $15, and that's a lot of money these days. And if I want to take my whole family, that's $80, right? I sort of better the devil you know, in a way. And that's why little films lose out all the time. Little Death has no stars in it. There's no celebrities to back it up, right? It's a foreign film. I mean, everything is against this film working in the States. Everything. The fact that it got released on one screen, I've got to tell you, is a miracle. When's the last Australian comedy you saw ever in a cinema in America? I mean, I cannot even remember. Have you got one?
Yeah, the one with the airport and the guy who's guarding his house. They want to take the house away and build.
Oh, the castle.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, they're good friends of mine, those guys. Yeah, but that was decades ago. Yeah, that's literally 20 years ago. And that's what I mean. Yeah.
And I remember it.
No, it's a great film. It's actually one of the best Australian films. All right, so we'll talk more later. But
was it your intention from the beginning to make this a comedy with such a noir side? Such a dark side also?
That's interesting. No would be the answer because I don't see it as really being too dark. I think romantic comedy is a tough genre, right? Because I think that the rom-com, as you know, you might imagine it in your head, is a bit of a dead genre, right? It doesn't quite fly the way it used to do in the 90s. So Richard Curtis's Notting Hill is a good example, right? I don't think that film would work if it was released today because I think it's too sweet. And I love Notting Hill, please don't get me wrong. It's just, I think the world has changed. I think that, you know, those Failure to Launch or How to Win a Guy in 10 Days and all that kind of stuff, they don't get made that much anymore because the world's become a little bit harder, a little bit more cynical. And so to do a rom-com these days, you have to have some hard edges, and that's all I put in there. Is just what I thought were, you know, spiky bits, but never. I didn't think it was too dark. I think you're right. The Sleeping Story is without question the darkest, and I wanted to put that in because I wanted there to be light and shade. I didn't want it to be all bright all the time. I thought to go down really made those moments when you went back up more powerful, and vice versa. But yeah, so I might see it a little bit less noir than you did, but that was never my intention. Was to.
It's not so much the stories, it was some of the incidents.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, of course, the parking lot scene and all that sort of stuff. But there's relief out of that, and it never goes to the worst possible place, right? And that's the thing. We go to the edge and we skirt around it, and I think that's important to. You know, because often laughter can come out of relief, where you're like, please don't do it, please don't do it, please don't. Oh, thank God they didn't do it. Okay, great, right? Thank God. So your laughter can come from lots of different places, but
It's a very creative
As I said, creative ending. We have a comment here.
Oh, well, let her finish. It sounded like a great comment.
I agree with her about the creative ending. I thank you for such a beautiful little film, and I personally look forward for these kinds of films. I'm totally bored with Terminators and all these action bang, bang, bang films. So thank you for a beautiful film with wonderful music, and I hope you do many more because you've got so much energy. You really should keep going.
Oh, thank you so
Bravo.
much. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
What's next? What's next for Josh?
Well, I just finished another screenplay. And so, you know, look out for it in the next 8 years. Oh, God, what am I doing?
Is it a comedy?
It is a comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy. I love comedy. And it's a comedy like this that's got heart, I hope. And you know, I believe that comedy is a beautiful, beautiful genre. And it can be really powerful. I believe that to be true.
Will you act in it?
No, I won't.
You gonna direct it?
The lead characters are in their 60s in this new film, so it's about Bill. You're in. So yeah.
I'll bring my fetish.
Before you go, I want to tell you a story, just a really, really quick story that I like to tell people in these Q&As. When I went to the video relay service, which actually they exist all over the world, those deaf services. Went to one in Brisbane and to look around the place, and the manager was showing us around and got to see all the interpreters do their thing as they were getting phone calls and all this sort of stuff. And they were awesome. They were really, really great. I didn't tell the manager what the film was about, you know, because I didn't need to, and I just didn't. You know, but as I was leaving, I said, "Hey, listen, thanks so much for showing me around, but I'm going to ask you something that might sound a little crazy, but have you ever gotten calls? Do you ever get calls from people wanting to have phone sex here?" And she goes, "Yeah, most of them." I was like, "You're kidding me?" She goes, No, most of the calls we get are phone sex. Wow. I was like, I went home that day and I called my producers and I said, "We have to make this thing now. Because someone will beat us to it." I don't know how. But it's apparently more common than you think. So, yeah, if you've got any deaf friends or family members, you know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. Any last words, Josh? Anything
Hopefully not my last words.
No, not really.
Hopefully you'll hear of me.
Something for us besides the movie to remember you by?
Oh,
so
look,
far?
I just want to thank you so much for coming out. I really, really do. And you know, the film is one of the last communal art forms that we have. You know, it's, as I say, the world's getting smaller. We're watching things on our phone, on our iPad. We're watching things alone. And to come to the movies and to sit in the dark with a bunch of strangers and to have a shared experience. To laugh at the same things, to gasp in the same moments, to share something with people you don't know is a special thing. It really, really is. And it reminds, I hope, why I make films at all, is I hope that it reminds you that you're not alone, that your struggles we're all struggling in the same way, and we're all struggling about the same things. And we all really share the same sense of humor, and we love the same way. And you can forget that when you watch things on your iPhone. And sometimes coming and chatting and watching films is a beautiful reminder that you know, that we're all pretty similar, whether you're from America or Australia or whatever else. So I thank you very much for coming out.
You're on your way.